Well, hey folks, this is John with Ozarks Backroads with you. We're out in the Ozarks again today. We're kind of on a mission. We've got our 2019 Triumph Tiger 800 XCX with us out on this adventure. This may be my most favorite bike that I've ever owned right here. I really like this motorcycle. It'll do pretty much anything that I need to do. So I'm going to hang on to this bad boy. So today we're kind of on a mission. I've been doing some family genealogy, and I've got folks on my father's side that have been in this country down here deep in the Ozarks on the rivers and creeks since the really early 1800s that I know of. I got a couple of a great-grandfather and a great-great-grandfather that nobody seems to know where their final resting place is, and I think I've figured it out. So I'm headed to an old cemetery if we can find it, and hopefully still get into it. And I think I'm going to find both of them there. This is going to be a pretty neat adventure. I've never been to this cemetery. I hope it's still accessible and in good shape, but we'll just have to get down there and see. But I think we'll be able to get to it. Get the Mighty Tiger going here. We just left the highway. We're just south of Dora, Missouri. So let's see if we can get down here. Well, I'm following a blue line here on some old county roads. You can tell they're old, really old roads that have been here a long time because they're cut way down where the road graders over the years, the last 200 years or so, these roads have been cut down pretty deep. Got a nice hill right here we get to climb up. It may be kind of rough down in here. They've had the road grader on this. The county's taking care of the roads. That's encouraging. So I'm pretty excited to find these graves of these people. I've heard about some of these people. I've got pictures of them from back in the day. So both of these fellas that we're looking for today my great-great-grandfather and my great-grandfather, they worked on the water mills. We had a lot of water mills. That's how the only source of power that was available was water. So we had a lot of water mills in the Ozarks, and it was it was part of the economy. You had to have them. You had to grind your grain and your corn, and you had to saw lumber, and water mills were important. Well, both of these fellas worked on the water mills different times. They owned land down here. They farmed. Everybody farmed back in those days. You had to grow what you ate, and you had to have pigs and chickens and a cow or two and a big garden. Like I said, both of these fellas had 10 or more children that survived to adulthood, and more I'm sure that didn't survive. So they had a lot of folks to feed. So you're a farmer back in those days. You were a farmer whether you liked it or not, because that's the only way you could eat. There wasn't enough work here to where you could just have a job and buy your food. People didn't do that. They grew their food, raised their food, and then they had jobs and did other things to get the other stuff they needed besides food. All them kids, I can only imagine how hard it must have been to raise that many kids, but they did it. They had to have a lot of kids to help them raise on the farms, to raise the food, and it was kind of a necessary thing. We're going right down onto the river bottom here. The river's going to be down here. Hopefully this hill isn't too bad. It doesn't look too bad. It's pretty bad off camber, but they've had the road grader over it, so shouldn't be any big washed out places. Okay, we're looking for the cemetery. There should be a road to the right. I'm not going to say a road, but a path anyhow, that'll take us into the cemetery. Pretty woolly down here. It doesn't surprise me that these folks wanted to be buried by the river. That was kind of their livelihood. They spent their lives on rivers and creeks, and that's how they made their money. I'm gonna go right here. I think this is our cemetery road right here. This ground's posted. There's an old barn, pretty old one. It's a big, beautiful bottom field down here with hay, pasture in it right now. And then the river runs right around, all the way around. We're going out in a peninsula, out in an oxbow of the river right here. There was no sign there where I turned off of that little road that said there was a cemetery here. Usually there'll be a sign on these old cemeteries. You'll see a sign, something out there on the road to let people know that, hey, there's a cemetery over here. I didn't see that. I do believe we are here. Yeah, it's an old one, you can tell just by looking at these old stones all falling over and stuff. All right, we're going on a hunt. We're looking for Smiths. We should find a ton of them in here. I take a look here at the cemetery. They've really done a nice job keeping this place up. This place has been here since the early 1800s. We're going to find some old graves in here. We've got an old outhouse here from back in the day. So the old outhouse here, this isn't just nostalgia. This thing's open for business. This thing's still in use. It's a two-holer. We got 2 seats in here. When people had funerals, why, you know, you need facilities when you got people gathered. So this thing's still doing the job today. We're back in the older part here. We've got a lot of these graves are just rocks. Here's a headstone with the footstone down here, and headstones and footstones here that aren't, they're not marked or they're broken off. I see my great-great-grandfather, Manuel Jackson Smith. I was mistaken. This is Manuel Jackson Smith, but this is not senior, this is junior. Senior would be my great-great-grandfather. Junior was his son. He had a son, named him Manuel Jackson Smith Jr. He's not my grandparent. He would be a great uncle, I guess. This is not senior. We still got to hunt a little bit here, but we're getting close. We're in the Smith area. I've hit pay dirt right here. This is Manuel Jackson Smith, born in 1827 and died in 1910. His wife was named Beth, Ella Beth Smith, wife, and both of them died in 1910. So this is my great-great-grandfather right here, and he came from Illinois. He was born in 1827 in Johnson County, Illinois, and I don't know how he got to the Ozarks, if he came with his parents or if he came after he was older and left home and came here. I don't know how he got here. We've got some more of his bunch in here. This would be one of his kids, Joseph Smith. Apparently he was a reverend. He born in 1860, died in 1935. He's buried here next to his father. This is William Isaac Smith, December 29, 1852 to October 3, 1939. William Isaac Smith is my great-grandfather. So Manuel over here, Jackson Smith, that we looked at, is my great-great-grandfather. And this is his son, William Isaac Smith. I represent the 5th generation. Manuel Jackson Smith over here, born in 1827. He had a son named William Isaac Smith right here, born in 1852. He had a son named James Smith, which was my grandfather, who had a son named Doyne Smith, who was my father, and then myself, and then I have a son. So the Smiths are still going. Okay, on the back side of William Isaac Smith, my great-granddad, is his wife on the back side of the same headstone. Oh, and there's an arrow. There's an arrow pointing to where she's at, and it's next to the headstone here. So she's buried over here, and there's just a rock. That's all that's left. Well, that's a pretty neat cemetery, and somebody's taking care of this really nicely. Yeah, I need to find out who the caretaker is overseeing this, and send them a little money every now and then, because they've done a beautiful job here. Now, this road goes on past, and the river's right over here, but I think it's private property, but I'm not sure. But we might sneak up there and have a look. And if it looks like it's private property or something, we can always skedaddle. I would like to get a look at the river down here, the creek. Beautiful big bottom right here to my left, along the river over here. Looks like the river might be right here. Yep, we got the river right here. Perfect, we got her pointed uphill. So you can see how the river goes around. It just goes in a circle around here, and that's our little cemetery we were in was just right up here, right in the oxbow of this river. Really good place to put a cemetery if you want to rest peacefully. I'd say that's about as good as you're going to get right there. Well, we'll go. We'll take our 8-mile hike around the mountain and go look at the mill real quick. The old mill that these folks, my folks here that are buried here, they used to work in these mills and work on these mills. My great-grandfather there, William Isaac, that we looked at his grave, he actually owned this mill, the land that it's on, and there was an old mill there, not the current mill, but when he owned it, but there was a mill there at this site. Look at these deer just running everywhere. I was glad I was able to find two of my grandparents there, and grandmothers, both of them, grandmothers and grandfathers for the great and the great. So that's pretty cool. Well, the wind protection on this motorcycle, after I've been on the Ibex, traveled on that CF Moto Ibex 800T, took that trip out to the western US this year on that, I really noticed how poor the wind protection is on this motorcycle. I used to think it was pretty decent, but it's not. Compared to that Ibex, it's not nearly as good, which today it feels better. I'm getting more air on me. It feels good, but it's noisy. It's noisy in my helmet, and not good for making video content for YouTube. So here's the mill right here, and the spring, this is the spring right here that powers the mill, or the output of the spring. The spring is actually against the bluff under the mill, and behind it they built the mill around the spring and over it. And then there's the one of the old wheels. Back before they had it electrified, they kept one of the old water wheels there, so that's pretty cool. This was a turbine, a steel turbine. The buckets are all gone, or the fins. But this would have been one of the last wheel before they went over to electricity. You can see where the big leather belt went on the wheel here. Right in there on the back side, there's a wheel. That leather belt would have ran in here and sent power up to the mill. You can see some more where the belts would have been. There would have been all kinds of pulleys and belts right here. I believe this is the turbine. When they went to making electricity, that was the turbine that the water ran in and spun this turbine, and then the power went up this shaft right here into the mill, and then that generators would have been inside the mill out of harm's way there. The water comes up there out of the bluff, and they used it here, and then it runs, after it comes through the turbine, it ran back underneath and out here. So this is the output of the spring right here. Here's a turbine that went down in the sump there into the spring that we were just looking down in. You can see the turbine blades on it. And it spun around. This cogged into a shaft that supplied power. That's pretty cool. They still got some of that old stuff. Pretty good little stream of water coming out of that spring. That's a lot of water. Well, we made it up. We came up the ramp, up the normal way, into the mill. It's all locked up. We can't get in it, but they got the windows graded up and everything. Here it shows the high water mark from some floods. So we're up here, I don't know, 20 feet above the 15 feet or so above the spring right here, up in this mill. And we can see on this doorway right here that in 2017 the water level got up to 20 feet, or it got up to here. It got all the way up to here in 2017, and then floods on down through the years how high it got. This flood here, we're about 5 feet up into the second story of this mill. So that is some seriously high water. But these rivers and creeks in the Ozarks, when we get a lot of rain in the spring, they can get pretty wild. But can you imagine 20 feet above what you see there? That's a lot of water. This whole bottom would be totally, it'd just look like the Mississippi River is what it'd look like, except it'd be going 100 miles an hour. Around the end of the building here, the mill, but there's an old cave right here behind the mill in the bluff. And they probably use that for storage, for cold storage, canned goods or whatever, food and different things. But just a little pocket, I imagine. I doubt if it's a real extensive cave. But nonetheless, they used what they had, and you could store potatoes and stuff in there. And got a mud pocket, another little pocket right back in there. So yeah, they took advantage of everything they had. Here's the back of the mill, kind of right up against the bluff. You can see it. So they built this thing right on the bluff. We're kind of on a ledge, kind of a ledge here on the bluff, and then it drops off again where the spring comes out. Another little bit of bluff there. Folks, I appreciate you all hanging out with me, checking out an old cemetery, and I found some of my kinfolk buried in there. I found a lot of my kinfolk buried in there. I knew they were around, but I didn't know exactly where they were. I heard they might be in there, and sure enough, they were. So that's pretty cool, pretty big day for me. We got a nice look at the creek there that goes around the side of the cemetery, and then this old mill here that my grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather all had a hand in this mill back in the day, keeping it going and adding on to it and improving it. So that's pretty cool. I invite you all to come back and see me. We'll go somewhere and do something else. Till I catch up with you again, y'all take care of yourselves. We'll catch you next time.